Remember that knockoff toy your cousin got for Christmas while you unwrapped an Optimus Prime? Yeah, the one that transformed into regret? Before you click away thinking this is just another nostalgia cash grab, let me tell you something that'll make your 1980s brain malfunction. Gobots actually beat Transformers to the big screen, featured more progressive female characters, and had a backstory so dark it makes Cybertron's war look like a playground dispute. This isn't the story you think you know. This is the bizarre, tragic, and honestly fascinating tale of the franchise that tried to win the robot wars and failed so spectacularly it became legendary for all the wrong reasons. Stick around, because what you're about to discover will completely change how you see that lesser toy line sitting in your parents' attic. Today, we're counting down 10 wild facts about Challenge of the Gobots that prove this show was weirder, darker, and more ambitious than anyone gave it credit for. From shocking progressive choices to catastrophic business failures. But before we dive in, make sure to subscribe and ring the notification bell right now. So let's transform and roll. Wait, wrong franchise. Fact number 10. Female Gobots were more progressive than Transformers. Here's something that'll blow your mind. While Transformers was busy being a sausage fest for 2 solid years, Gobots said, "Hold my energon," and featured prominent female characters from day one. We're talking about Crasher, a ruthless renegade who didn't need a backstory about being special or rare, and Smallfoot, a guardian who kicked just as much mechanical tail as the boys. And here's the kicker. They weren't designed to look like robot supermodels in heels. They were just robots, with actual personalities, actual roles in combat. No apologetic girl character energy whatsoever. In 1984, this was practically revolutionary. While Arcee wouldn't show up in Transformers until 1986, looking conspicuously feminine for a species that supposedly doesn't have gender, Gobots just treated female robots as equals. No fanfare, no special episodes explaining why girl robots exist. They just existed, fought, and mattered. It's darkly ironic that the inferior franchise actually understood representation better than the one that won. But hey, progressive storytelling doesn't sell toys, right? Speaking of things that don't sell. Fact number 9. The toys were Japanese. Animation was made in Taiwan. Let's talk about that animation quality you remember. Or rather, that animation quality you're trying to forget. Those stiff movements, those recycled explosion frames, that general sense that the animators were being held at gunpoint to finish episodes in 72 hours? There's a reason for that. The Gobots toys were originally Japanese machine robo figures that Tonka imported and slapped new names on, while Hanna-Barbera outsourced the actual animation to Wong Film Productions in Taiwan. This was the 1980s cost-cutting playbook, and boy, does it show. The hilarious part? Wong Film Productions also animated Transformers G1, which means both franchises share that same janky, occasionally off-model aesthetic that defined Saturday morning cartoons. The difference is, we forgave Transformers because Optimus Prime dying traumatized us into loyalty, while Gobots just looked cheap without earning our emotional investment. When you're cutting corners on a knockoff of a toy commercial disguised as a cartoon, maybe you've gone too deep into the cost-saving rabbit hole, but at least they saved enough budget to hire some serious Hollywood talent for their movie. How'd that work out, you ask? Fact number 8. The Gobots movie beat Transformers to theaters. March 1986. Gobots, Battle of the Rock Lords hits theaters a full 5 months before Transformers. The movie traumatizes an entire generation. This should have been their moment. Their chance to prove they weren't just Transformers' awkward younger sibling. Instead, they made $1.3 million at the box office and created what critics generously called a disaster. They even brought in the big guns, Margot Kidder, Telly Savalas, and Roddy McDowall. And according to reviews, you could hear the embarrassment in their voices through the screen. These accomplished actors sounded like they were contractually obligated to be there and counting the seconds until they could leave. The movie bombed so hard it became a cult classic in the "so bad it's good" category, which is like winning a participation trophy at the Failure Olympics. Imagine being first to theaters and still losing. That's not just bad luck, that's performance art. The truly tragic part? This movie's failure basically sealed Gobots' fate before Transformers even had a chance to kill Optimus Prime and make billions in therapy bills. But to understand why Gobots was doomed from the start, you need to know their origin story. And trust me, it's darker than you remember. Fact number 7. Gobots were originally organic beings. Forget everything you thought you knew about cute transforming robots. The Gobots' backstory is nightmare fuel disguised as a toy commercial. These robots weren't built. They were survivors of an apocalypse. They started as organic beings called Go beings, living peacefully on Gobotron until a terrorist group called the Renegades, led by someone literally named the Master Renegade, started a civil war. And here's where it gets horrifyingly dark. A Renegade sabotage operation accidentally caused a massive asteroid to slam into Gobotron, nearly exterminating the entire species. The survivors were dying, their organic bodies destroyed, until a genius called the Last Engineer saved them by ripping their brains out and shoving them into mechanical bodies. Let that sink in. These cute toys you're nostalgic about are actually the traumatized survivors of genocide, walking around in robotic coffins, unable to ever return to their original forms. This explains why Gobots have genders, unlike the asexual Transformers, because these were real people once. People with lives, families, bodies they'll never get back. And we expected kids to process this while eating Apple Jacks? The 1980s were wild, man. This is basically a body horror story that somehow got a toy line. No wonder kids preferred Transformers, who were just robots who could turn into cars. Simple, clean, not existentially terrifying. But if the dark backstory wasn't confusing enough, wait until you hear about the visual design choices. Fact number 6. No faction markings made it confusing. Picture this. You're 7 years old. It's Saturday morning, and you're trying to figure out who's good and who's evil in Gobots. There are no Autobot symbols, no Decepticon badges, no color-coded teams, just robots fighting other robots. And your only clue is whether they looked monstrous or not. Transformers understood basic visual storytelling. See the Autobot symbol? Good guy. See the Decepticon symbol? Bad guy. Easy. Gobots said, nah, let's make kids work for it, and provided 0 identifying markers. This wasn't artistic ambiguity, this was just confusing. Imagine trying to follow a war movie where both armies wear the same uniform and you have to guess who's who based on whether someone looks slightly meaner. That's Gobots. And here's the modern equivalent. It's like watching a Marvel movie where nobody wears their costume and you have to remember who's a hero based on their facial hair. Actually, that might be an improvement over the current MCU. The point is, when your target audience needs a decoder ring to follow basic plot structure, you've failed at visual communication. But hey, at least they hired some incredible voice talent to distract from the confusion. Fact number 5. Future comedy legends voiced Gobots. This is where Gobots gets weirdly impressive. Phil Hartman, before he became an SNL legend and voiced Troy McClure, was voicing Baron Von Joy in a cartoon that most people don't remember. Peter Cullen, the literal voice of Optimus Prime, also voiced characters in Gobots, including Blockhead and Pincher. Frank Welker, who voiced Megatron and practically every animal sound in Hollywood, voiced Scooter and others. This wasn't a cast of nobodies. This was Murderer's Row of voice acting talent. And they were wasted on a show with scripts that felt like first drafts written during a commercial break. It's like hiring Gordon Ramsay to cook at a gas station. The talent was there. The material? Not so much. These actors brought genuine life and personality to characters that deserved better writing, better animation, and better toys. It's a testament to their skill that anyone remembers these characters at all. Today, we recognize these names as legends. Back then, they were just trying to pay rent by voicing robots in a show that was already losing the war. And speaking of losing, let's talk about how Gobots started as a loser before it even reached America. Fact number 4. Based on a failed Japanese toy line. Here's a business strategy that definitely won't backfire. Take a toy line that already bombed in Japan, import it to America, and expect it to somehow become successful. Genius. The Gobots were based on Machine Robo, a Japanese toy series that had already proven it couldn't compete in its home market. Tonka looked at this failure and thought, yeah, that'll work in America, because apparently nobody at Tonka understood the concept of due diligence. The toys had inferior transformation mechanisms compared to Transformers. The names were less cool, the designs were less inspired. They were literally seen as possibly knockoffs by consumers, which is the retail kiss of death. And they were more expensive and less durable than Transformers. So let me get this straight. You're selling an inferior product at a higher price point, based on a toy line that already failed, and competing against Transformers. What could possibly go wrong? This is like trying to compete with Coca-Cola by repackaging RC Cola in a more expensive bottle. The market had already decided Machine Robo wasn't worth it, but American corporate hubris said, "We can fix this." Spoiler alert, they could not fix this. But they did try to build hype with an interesting strategy. Fact number 3. Had a mini-series before regular series. October 1984. Tonka and Hanna-Barbera drop a 5-part miniseries to introduce the Gobots universe and build anticipation for the regular series. Smart move, right? Create buzz, get kids hooked, then deliver the full series. Except the regular series didn't premiere until September 1985, a full year later. In marketing terms, that's not a gap, that's a chasm. That's not building anticipation, that's giving people time to forget you exist. Imagine if Marvel released an Avengers teaser trailer and then said, "Movie comes out next year, maybe, we'll see." By the time Gobots returned, Transformers had already established dominance, created beloved characters, and built a loyal fan base. Gobots had momentum, and then just stopped. It's like training for a marathon, running the first mile really well, and then taking a year-long nap before finishing. The competition doesn't wait for you to feel ready. Transformers certainly didn't. This strategic blunder might have contributed more to Gobots' failure than the quality issues, because timing in the toy industry is everything. And speaking of timing, the international market didn't even want to be associated with the Gobots name. Fact number 2, rebranded as Machine Men in Australia. When your brand is doing so poorly that international markets refuse to use your name, you know you've got problems. In Australia, Gobots was rebranded as Machine Men to avoid confusion with Transformers and to create a distinct identity. Let that irony marinate for a second. They changed the name to avoid confusion, but the only thing Australians were confused about was why anyone thought this would compete with Transformers. The toys were Machine Men. The cartoon was Machine Men. Even the movie became Machine Men, Battle of the Rock Lords, which somehow sounds even less appealing. This wasn't just rebranding. This was witness protection for a franchise, like changing your name after a scandal and hoping nobody recognizes you. And just like witness protection, it didn't really work. The franchise still failed internationally, proving that a terrible product by any other name is still a terrible product. Shakespeare would have appreciated the tragedy, but to truly understand Gobots' failure, we need to talk about the most brutal fact of all. Fact number 1, created to copy Transformers, but failed miserably. Here's the devastating truth. Gobots wasn't created from passion or innovation or artistic vision. It was created because Tonka looked at Hasbro's Transformers' success and thought, "We want that money." They imported the failed Japanese Machine Robo toys, slapped new names on them, commissioned a cartoon, and expected lightning to strike twice. Instead, they created a cautionary tale about the dangers of imitation without understanding. The toys were less impressive. The transformation gimmicks were simpler and less satisfying. The cartoon animation was cheaper and less engaging. The characters were less memorable and less distinct. The marketing was less effective. Gobots lost on every measurable front. And here's the kicker. They weren't even really competing. Transformers was playing a different game entirely, building mythology, creating emotional connections, and understanding that kids don't just want toys, they want stories. Gobots gave them products. Transformers gave them legends. By the late 1980s, Gobots faded into obscurity, becoming that thing your friend's less cool cousin had, while Transformers became a multi-billion-dollar global phenomenon that's still printing money 4 decades later. The failure of Gobots isn't just about bad toys or bad cartoons. It's about the fundamental difference between copying success and creating it. You can't manufacture magic by following someone else's formula. But here's something they don't want you to know. So there you have it. 10 wild facts that prove Gobots was far more interesting and tragically misunderstood than anyone remembers. They had a darker backstory than Transformers, better female representation, hit theaters first, and still lost everything. Because being first doesn't matter if you're not the best, and you can't win by being the bargain bin version of someone else's vision. Maybe this forgotten franchise deserved better. Or maybe progressive storytelling and existential body horror just don't sell toys when you're competing with Optimus Prime. But speaking of Ruthless 1000, 980 seconds cartoons with wild, untold stories, check out our video on Battle of the Planets 1978, 10 wild facts you didn't know. If you thought Gobots had a dark backstory, wait until you hear what they did to that anime when they brought it to America. Links in the description. Unlike that Gobots toy your cousin got, you won't regret it.